The political world was rocked this morning by a high-stakes dismissal that few saw coming so early in the administration. President Donald Trump has officially fired Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, marking the first major cabinet exit of his second term. This wasn't just a standard personnel change or a quiet resignation to spend more time with family. This was a public, high-velocity implosion involving hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars and a tragic loss of life that made her position politically untenable. At the heart of the crisis are two devastating storylines: a $220 million taxpayer-funded advertising campaign that critics have labeled a vanity project, and a botched federal operation that resulted in the fatal shooting of two United States citizens. The Department of Homeland Security is the third largest cabinet department in the federal government. It is responsible for border security, anti-terrorism, and disaster response. When the leader of such a massive apparatus loses the confidence of both the West Wing and the halls of Congress, the fallout is rarely anything less than explosive. To understand how one of Donald Trump's most loyal allies went from a rising star to a political liability in record time, we have to look at the sequence of events that led to this morning's early-hour announcement. Kristi Noem's relationship with Donald Trump has been characterized by years of steadfast loyalty. As the governor of South Dakota, she was one of the first and most vocal supporters of the MAGA movement, often appearing at rallies and defending the president's policies on national television when others wavered. Her appointment to lead the Department of Homeland Security was seen by many as a reward for that loyalty. She was tasked with overseeing some of the most sensitive and high-profile priorities of the second term, specifically regarding border enforcement and internal security protocols. However, the transition from the governor's mansion in Pierre to the DHS headquarters in Washington proved to be more turbulent than expected. From the outset, there were reports of friction between Noem's leadership team and the career officials within the various sub-agencies like ICE and the Secret Service. The primary point of contention and the catalyst for her downfall began with the launch of a massive national branding initiative. Under Noem's direction, the DHS authorized a $220 million campaign intended to rebrand the agency's image and increase public trust in federal enforcement. While government agencies frequently spend money on recruitment and public awareness, the scale and nature of this particular campaign immediately raised red flags. The $220 million price tag was astronomical, even by Washington standards. According to internal documents leaked to the press, the campaign relied heavily on high-end production values and featured Secretary Noem herself as the primary face of the advertisements. Critics quickly pointed out that the ads looked less like public service announcements and more like a national political campaign for a future presidential run. The self-promotion narrative began to take hold when it was revealed that a significant portion of the $220 million was diverted from operational budgets meant for border technology and agent training. In the eyes of her detractors, Noem was using her position at the DHS to build her personal brand on the taxpayer's dime. This was not just a concern for Democrats. It began to alienate the very base that had supported her rise. As the controversy over the ad campaign reached a boiling point, a much darker crisis emerged. Reports surfaced of a federal enforcement operation involving DHS agents that ended in tragedy. In a residential neighborhood, federal agents engaged in a high-stakes raid that resulted in the fatal shooting of two U.S. citizens. The details of the incident remain under investigation, but early reports indicate a series of catastrophic communication failures. The public outcry was immediate. The DHS, already under fire for its spending, was now facing accusations of extreme mismanagement and a lack of oversight regarding the use of lethal force. These two events created a perfect storm. It is one thing to mismanage a budget. It is quite another to preside over an agency that is seen as both fiscally irresponsible and operationally dangerous. The political significance of this firing cannot be overstated. In the first term of the Trump administration, cabinet turnover was frequent, but the second term was expected to be defined by a more disciplined and vetted team of loyalists. Noem was supposed to be the gold standard of that loyalty. Her removal sends a clear message. In this administration, even the highest levels of loyalty cannot protect a cabinet member from the fallout of a public scandal that threatens the president's own standing. The reaction on Capitol Hill has been a rare display of bipartisan agreement, though for very different reasons. Democrats have been calling for an investigation into the $220 million expenditure since the ads first aired, citing it as a clear violation of ethics rules. However, the real blow to Noem's survival came from within her own party. A group of MAGA-aligned Republicans, led by the influential Senator John Kennedy, began to publicly voice their frustration. Senator Kennedy, known for his sharp wit and folksy metaphors, didn't hold back. In a series of comments to reporters, he suggested that the DHS under Noem was running like a Ferrari with no steering wheel and a driver who's only looking in the rearview mirror at her own reflection. When the most prominent voices in the Republican Party start using the self-promotion narrative against a cabinet member, the end is usually near. The alliance between traditional fiscal conservatives and the populist wing of the party created a wall of opposition that Noem could not overcome. Behind the scenes at the White House, the betrayal narrative was the final nail in the coffin. Reports suggest that President Trump felt that Noem's focus on her own image was detracting from his administration's core mission. In the Trump political orbit, the cardinal sin is overshadowing the president or using his platform for personal gain at the expense of the agenda. Once the perception took hold that Noem was prioritizing her $220 million media blitz over the safety of American citizens and the efficiency of the DHS, her fate was sealed. The agency's shutdown is another factor that analysts are highlighting. Due to the internal chaos and the ongoing investigations into the fatal shootings, several key DHS initiatives had ground to a halt. The department was effectively paralyzed, unable to move forward on border policy or security mandates, while it was busy answering subpoenas and dealing with a public relations nightmare. This operational gridlock was a liability for a White House that prides itself on decisive action. The president reportedly viewed the situation as a distraction that he was no longer willing to tolerate. If you follow global politics and the shifting power dynamics of the U.S. government, consider subscribing for more analysis like this. We dive deep into the stories that define the modern political landscape, providing the context you need to understand the headlines. The question now is, what happens next for the Department of Homeland Security and for Kristi Noem? The vacancy at the head of the DHS leaves a massive hole in the administration's security apparatus. The president will need to find a successor who can not only pass a likely contentious Senate confirmation, but also restore morale to an agency that has been battered by these recent scandals. Names are already being floated, ranging from hardline immigration officials to former military leaders. The goal for the White House will be to find someone who is seen as a steady hand, someone who can implement the president's policies without the baggage of personal political ambitions. As for Kristi Noem, the road back to political relevance is steep. A $220 million scandal and a firing from a cabinet position is a heavy weight to carry. While she remains a figure with a significant following, the self-promotion tag is a difficult one to shake in a movement that demands absolute focus on the president's objectives. The legal fallout may also be just beginning. There are ongoing calls for a special prosecutor to look into the DHS ad spending. If it is found that funds were misappropriated or that bidding processes were bypassed to favor specific media firms, the scandal could move from the political realm into the judicial one. Furthermore, the families of the 2 U.S. citizens killed in the federal operation have announced their intent to file a wrongful death lawsuit against the government. This will keep the tragic events of Noem's tenure in the news for months, if not years, to come. The broader geopolitical implications of this firing are also significant. The DHS is the primary point of contact for international security cooperation. A leadership vacuum at the department can affect everything from intelligence sharing with allies to the management of international ports of entry. Foreign leaders are watching this development closely. They are looking for signs of whether this firing indicates a shift in policy or if it is simply a matter of internal discipline. In the world of high-stakes diplomacy, the stability of a nation's domestic security agency is a key indicator of its overall strength. Analysts suggest that this firing might be the start of a broader house cleaning within the administration. With the first major cabinet exit occurring so early, other officials may be looking over their shoulders, realizing that the president's patience for scandal and mismanagement is thinner than previously thought. The rare alliance of Democrats and MAGA Republicans that brought Noem down is also a fascinating development. It shows that there are certain lines, particularly regarding the use of taxpayer funds and the loss of American life, that still trigger a bipartisan response in a deeply divided Washington. This event serves as a stark reminder of the volatility of modern politics. Kristi Noem went from being a potential vice presidential pick to a fired cabinet secretary in a matter of months. The speed at which a political career can unravel in the digital age is unprecedented. As the dust settles on this morning's announcement, the focus remains on the $220 million. In an era where every dollar of government spending is under the microscope, the Freedom Works Here style of branding in a federal agency will likely be a case study for years to come on what happens when political branding meets government bureaucracy. The fatal shootings will remain the most tragic aspect of this story. Beyond the budgets and the political posturing, two families are grieving, and the questions regarding federal oversight and the rules of engagement remain unanswered. The next Secretary of Homeland Security will inherit a department that is not only broke in terms of its public image, but is also facing a crisis of conscience. The downfall of Kristi Noem is a complex narrative of ambition, mismanagement, and the harsh realities of serving in a high-profile administration. It highlights the delicate balance between being a loyalist and being an effective administrator. In the coming weeks, we can expect more details to emerge as the various investigations proceed. We will see how the president's base reacts to the removal of one of their most prominent figures and whether the DHS can find its footing under new leadership. This story is a clear example of how personal scandals and agency-wide failures can become an anchor for a White House that wants to sail toward its policy goals. In the end, the political liability simply became too heavy to carry. As global tensions evolve and domestic policies shift, decisions like this often have ripple effects far beyond a single announcement. The firing of a DHS secretary is a major event that changes the trajectory of the administration and the lives of those involved. We will continue to monitor the situation and provide updates as the search for a new secretary begins and as the investigations into the $220 million scandal move forward. The era of Kristi Noem at the Department of Homeland Security has come to an abrupt and controversial end. Whether this was a necessary correction for the administration or a sign of deeper internal fractures is something that only time and the subsequent actions of the White House will reveal. Thank you for watching this in-depth analysis. We aim to bring you the facts and the context behind the headlines that matter most. If you found this breakdown helpful, please like the video and share your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think was the primary reason for Noem's firing? Was it the money, the shootings, or the politics? We'll see you in the next report.